Hey everybody, it's Irene with BrainStormAcres, and this morning we're in the greenhouse. Time for a tour. We're going to start at the greenhouse door end, which is the north end of the greenhouse, and we're going to work our way down. Now, as you can see on the right hand side here, this is the hydroponics, and there's even a few red tomatoes and there's lots of green ones, so we have a lot to look forward to here. There's a little bit of browning occasionally and stuff like that, might be a little blight or something, but in general we're doing well. We've had a very steady stream of tomatoes out of here. Whole stack of Amanda oranges that have turned into tomato sandwiches and BLTs. And a bunch of other stuff too, including some big beef and Wisconsin 55s and lots of cherry tomatoes off of the Garden's Delight. In one and all, I mean, considering we got the stuff in late, we had issues, it turned out pretty good. And it'll be interesting to see how long we can keep them this fall, as our weather someday might ever, I don't know, get cooler? I don't know. You know, foolish. This little thing over here is kind of a weird thing that happened. This is a classic case of I just couldn't get it done in time. These sunflowers were supposed to go out into the garden. And you know what? It just didn't happen. Just did not happen. And they got tall and they got scraggly. And I felt really sorry for them because it was my fault. They didn't do anything wrong. They grew a little faster than I thought they would, but I just didn't get them out. So what I decided to do was, instead of just tossing them, I would stuff them in this pot. And you know what? They're doing well. One of them is done blooming now, but the other ones have just started. And it's really kind of cheerful to come out here and see these cool sunflowers in the greenhouse, even though it wasn't what I planned. You know, it's okay. It's okay. They're cheerful. These are empty. These are wicking totes. Later in the fall, this will become something. Not sure what yet. Haven't decided. I know because of the labels I left in it that was lettuce, and so was that. So if I put brassicas in there afterwards, no big deal. Lettuce is in the daisy family. Brassicas are in the brassica family. So, kohlrabi, look at this beggar. He is a monster. He has grown twice as fast as his brethren, and he needs to get harvested. Peppers. These are Godfather peppers and a basil, back there. And buckets of peppers have come off there. I need to make more relish because the relish uses peppers. One of them does. Sorrel radishes, doing very well, and lizard spinach. This was the second bucket of lizard spinach I planted. Very poor germination, but as you can see, the plants that are here are doing very well. And between this and the other bucket that I have, no problem. Thai basil, continuing to look absolutely gorgeous, and just smells so wonderful. Regular basil and tarragon. I also, they always say that nature abhors a vacuum. That means that nature doesn't like things to be bare. So when I was planting these radish seeds here, I decided I'd toss a couple in here too. So there's actually several radishes that have come up in there too. These are not doing as well because I wasn't as fussy with that as I was with this bucket down here, but they're still doing fine now. And now that I'm being more fussy, I accidentally let that wilt a couple times. They're growing just fine. Pak choi, very healthy. Only 2 left in here now. We've eaten the rest of them. So yeah, that's what they're there for. I need to actually harvest this guy. But we need to decide when we want to have either soup or stir fry. Provider bush beans. I harvested these again this morning, and you can see there are plenty more beans to be had. I'm now sitting here going, why did I do this? These are gone crazy, and I'm getting yet more beans that I don't need. They have reminded me of something. They have reminded me that I do want to try growing some beans in here next year. But next time I'm going to use a pole bean. I haven't decided what kind yet. Years ago, and I couldn't tell you how many years ago at this point, we used to grow Vortex, and I know other people who grow Vortex. And we have been totally unlucky with Vortex for the last 4 years, maybe. They just always seem to have something terrible happen to them. So there'll be a hailstorm, our mouse will decide to chew off the stem, something like that. So we actually have, I think, one Vortex plant alive in the garden right now, in with the yard-long beans. But what I want to do next year is, instead of growing this, which was fun and crazy and a great experiment, and it just goes to show that how much you can really produce in a single, this is a tote, you know, this is a regular wicking tote that's made out of a storage tote from big box store. You know, you can grow an amazing amount of food in something this small. I think there's 9 plants in there, and we are getting 2 servings every day. So, and some days 3 servings or 4 servings. So, you know, that's an awful lot for that space. That really is. That's pretty amazing. All in all, a total success, but I probably won't do it again because, first of all, I don't need that many green beans. But second of all, although if I did, I could, I want to try growing a pole bean because I want to be able to run them up on the purlins. And I know somebody who's done that before, and it did work for them beautifully. And I just think it would be fun to be able to see the beans hanging down rather than having to scrounge through here looking for beans. I mean, they're there, but you know, it'd be just fun, just something different. I mean, I've always envied the people who could put in the big arches in their gardens and have these cool arches with beans hanging down off of them. I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. So we're going to try that next time. Touchstone Gold beets and Red Ace beets. Space spinach. Now that's what I call germination. This, I think maybe we lost 1 seed, and I would guess what happened is it got washed away because of a splurge of water there. But virtually 100% germination. This is kohlrabi. Half of it is quicksilver and half of it is purple Vienna. And this side, the quick star rather, not quick star silver. This side here is quick star, which is a white kohlrabi, and this side is purple. You can see the stem on it is purple. So got good germination out of that. In fact, I apparently dropped a couple of extra seeds in there that I hadn't planned on. That's okay. Kohlrabi will usually like bend away from one another and still manage to do just fine. This is a carrot thing, and we have a carrot up right there. It's the no, I take that back. There's one up there too. I was going to say it's the only one up, but yeah, I noticed that we had one up this morning. It's a little hard to see because they're kind of teeny tiny, but that's okay. Everything starts out teeny tiny. This is one of my junk baskets. I had a bunch of Thai basil that got scraggly and underwatered and underfed and everything else, and I decided that I just couldn't bear to toss it, even though that was silly. So I took this pot and I stuck a random husk cherry that wasn't supposed to be in here, but apparently managed to get in here somehow, in there, along with 2 of the Thai basil. And they're currently loving life, and the husk cherry is producing small fruit. Now that's not as big as its brother, who has been over here safely, you know, in a better pot for a long time, but I suspect future fruit will become larger now that the plant is a lot happier and healthier. And we're finding that the quality of fruit that we're getting in the greenhouse is extremely good. So yeah, I'm kind of loving that, especially since our stuff in the garden didn't do particularly well. We have more of a jungle here. Underneath this is the remainder of our lizard spinach. And I have fertilized this. It's doing better. I think it's just kind of reaching end of life. It's starting to bolt a little bit. So what I need to do is I need to harvest this out completely and just recycle this bin into something else. This branch that I'm holding with my other hand, because otherwise you can't see the lizard spinach, is husk cherry, and this is an excellent example of how the big and fluffy the plants are producing fruit in here. Every single one of those lantern-shaped things will come out to be a fruit, and the big ones will probably be about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch in diameter fruits. Very sweet, very tasty. They're in the same family as tomatoes, so they're a nightshade, and they look like a tomatillo almost. So yeah, they have the same basic rules for growing as a tomatillo does. And this jungle back here is peppers, obviously, or not so obviously. There's Godfather peppers and there's Sandia peppers in here, some of which are now going red. And we need to have a plan because these pepper plants are falling over from the weight of the peppers. I had the same problem in here. I just harvested out the Mamma Mia Rossos that had already gone red. This is another Mamma Mia Rosso plant here, but those obviously have not gone red yet. These chilies over here have gone red, and like I say, we need to come up with a plan quickly because it's time to harvest them. Looking back down the greenhouse, you can see we're quite the jungle here. Very pleased with production in here this year. Not as much trouble as we had last year. We had a few thrips early on, but for whatever reason, they just didn't get a hold the way they did last year, and I'm really happy about that. This is our cantaloupe and miscellanea bucket. As you can see, the plant is pretty happy. It has not set any fruit that I've seen yet. Most of these flowers, like 99.99% of them, are male. So I've been watching because I'm determined that if I spot a female flower, I will make sure it gets pollinated. I've had a couple of requests from people to show me how to pollinate by hand, but obviously unless I can find a female flower, I can't do that. But this is a mixed bucket. This is one of those buckets where I took some old cubes left from trying to seed start that the seeds hadn't started in, and I just tossed them in here. And then when I started watering it, because I had put the cantaloupe seeds in here, and obviously I wanted them to grow, all of a sudden I have 4 carrots, a husk cherry, and a flower. I'm not even really totally 100% sure what kind of flower this is. I keep thinking I should know what it is, but my brain is just going thud thud instead of, or click click maybe, instead of coming up with the right answer. Once it blooms, I will totally know what flower it is, obviously. But we have a flower in there too. And at first I was going to pull the things out, and then I said, why? The cantaloupe's growing straight up. I could water it a little extra and give it a little extra fertilizer, and you know, the husk cherry's mostly staying down here, and you can see how happy it is. Look at the size of those fruits in there. And that's a nice example of what a husk cherry flower looks like. They're really cool. You've got this little flower petal design kind of in the middle. Very neat. Anyway, doing really well. I mean, why not? I have been told by the people who sell me these seeds, which in this case, these are Johnny's seeds, that husk cherries are slightly, they're in the nightshade family, but they're slightly more frost tolerant than tomatoes and peppers are. So whereas peppers will pretty much like jump off a cliff and die the minute you get a frost, or even sometimes when your nights have gotten too cool, and tomatoes will really quit when they get frosted. These guys will hang on just a little bit longer. So we'll see how they do. I mean, the fact that we have some coverage in here means that we might get husk cherries later than we think we will, which would be fine because we have not gotten enough to put up this year. Is that a total tragedy? No, it's not. We have really enjoyed eating them, and it's kind of like there are certain things that are almost better fresh, so we'll see. Cucumbers. You may notice that there were fewer stems here than there were previously. It was a bit of a more of a jungle, but what I do, and I came up with this idea myself, I didn't read it anywhere. I was watching the stems. Now, this is something you would probably not notice in a garden situation, because usually your cucumbers are just this huge chaos of, you know, stems and leaves, and you know, you're watching for cucumber beetles and this and that and the other thing. We have had a few squash beetles in here, squash bugs, but they have not, knock on wood, become a problem to this point. I watch carefully in here, and anytime I see one, I, yes, you guessed it, squash them. But what I did was I would watch each stem, and as it would put out side shoots, initially I allowed some of them to go on and do their thing. And they did, and they produced, and they produced, and they produced. And then I was noticing that some of the side shoots kind of stopped doing anything. They were no longer setting any fruit. They were a bit more yellowy than the other ones. And no matter how much I fertilized and how much I gave them TLC, they just were not setting any fruit. So I decided that as I found a shoot like that that didn't look healthy and that had stopped producing, that I would simply remove it from the plant. So I can't tell you which shoot came first, you know. I suspect the ones that have already come off were probably the earlier ones. But for instance, look at the top of this guy. I mean, he has got a ton. These have all got a ton of fruit on them. So it's not like we're short on fruit. And I'm gonna watch these guys over here. There's two shoots over here. This one and this one. They're both a little yellowy, but so far this one doesn't seem to be producing any fruit. This one does. If this one continues to produce fruit and this one doesn't set any, I'll simply completely eliminate this down to where it joins the trunk. And that way the plant, because these are older, the plant can concentrate all its efforts on what it's got left. If you have flies in here, you'll see the nasty little beasts here. And not all of these are flies. Some of these are actually some sort of strange buzzy thing. They're pollinators, so the flies are not so much a pollinator as the other things, but we have some little, they're not, I don't know whether they're wasps or some sort of a fly or some sort of a bee. I don't know. They go into the flowers and they wander around between flowers, so they seem to fill the job of pollinating. Okay, this is our crazy runaway sweet potato plant. And this is where we've been getting sweet potato slips for our buckets all along. All I do is I break a runner off, stick it in the soil, water it well for a few days, it puts down roots, and you have another plant. This is my scroungy section. I have given away a couple of the herbs that were in here, including some chives, some brens. I need to call up a couple of people and say anybody wants some tarragon or anybody wants some, you know, because I don't have any local people that I can give stuff to easily. I actually need to check my email because I think I know somebody locally who might not have some of these herbs. I just need to take the time to do it, which is sometimes easier to talk about than to do. This is a minor disaster. This is a seed starting tray. I'd have to check the date to see what when I actually started them. We had an extraordinarily hot day that was not anticipated. I was busy. I didn't notice. They got roasted. And what I need to do is I need to say, okay, and start over. So the Copenhagens are fine. This Atlantis, which is a broccoli, is fine. That little pak choi is going to be fine. That guy is so scroungy, I don't think I'm going to save him. But on the other ones, I just plain need to fluff them up, put a little bit more soil on top, and put in new seeds. Sometimes this happens. I try and pay attention. I just mixed it for one day, and that's all it took. So, since I roasted the seeds that are in there, like I say, they may come up, because sometimes what will happen is when it starts to cool down, they'll come out of their thermal dormancy and grow just fine. But I don't want to risk that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to shuffle these to the side into another tray and start over again. The rest of this I am super happy with. It's we're starting to plan already for next year. Things like changing the bush beans to pole beans. You know, maybe the pole beans here just outside always suffer a disaster. Maybe we can keep them from suffering a disaster in the greenhouse. So I think that's worth a try. Well, I hope you've enjoyed getting to visit the greenhouse a little bit. Maybe even learn something. I don't know. But yeah, I have a few seeds to plant up today. And then I'm going to get on to my next collection of things to do. Like I say, I already harvested the green beans out of here this morning. There's some that are borderline, but I'm going to let them get a little bit bigger. Lots to do, lots going on. There'll be way more things growing in here, hopefully all winter. We want a steady supply of things like pak choi and cabbage, but we don't want to be swamped with it. And that's a hard thing because there's only 2 of us. But our goal is to have things like the kohlrabi, which can hold very well. We'll see. We'll see. I guess you'll just have to come back and check and see what happens, because we're still brainstorming and you need to too. So be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, because I know a whole bunch of you people who are watching this are not subscribing, and it really helps us a lot. It lets YouTube know that, that's Jack wandering back and forth for anybody who doesn't know. It lets YouTube know that people really do like us. We talk to our people, we answer questions, we try and be helpful when we see common questions coming up on a regular basis. We're going to be doing another video, probably will actually be viewed before this one. And, you know, because we see certain topics coming up over and over again, and I've been able to get some good pictures, which I think will clarify some questions that people have. So until next time, bye. And keep on brainstorming.